to Accelerated Mixed Martial Arts Training, Strategies, Tactics, and Techniques Tips for the Week for MMA. I'm Rich Alton, and today's video tutorial is going to cover an interesting topic that I've been getting a lot of feedback on my social media platforms, and that topic is how do I increase my power so my striking skill sets and my overall performance improve from my fighting skills. Okay, so the question I've been getting a lot is how do I increase my power for my striking skill sets and my overall performance in my mixed martial arts training, and what exercises do you recommend that I do, and if any exercises that you do recommend, what barbell lifts specifically would you recommend to help achieve that goal? And my answer to that question is very complex because it's not easy to answer in just one simple answer. And the reason for that is that first and foremost, you have to understand if this is something that's interesting to you, for you to increase your power, you have to understand there's several things going on here. First and foremost, you have to understand how the human body is designed to move in its natural habitat. All right. The second thing is you have to be able to understand kind of forces in relationship to motion and direction, and how that's happening in boxing and kickboxing. All right. The third thing is you have to understand what different types of strengths that you may be needing. Right. The fourth thing could be just where are you where are you at in your overall training. This is all relative based on the individual. Whether you're a beginner or experienced, what type of strength you need, your technique. Okay, so assuming that your technique is pretty sound, that plays a huge role. The other thing that plays a major role, that what this video is going to really talk about today, is the barbell lifts. And what I mean by the barbell lifts, the classical barbell lifts that are very popular, that obviously have been proven through decades of research and testing and results, that how the barbell lifts may help you or may hinder your overall striking skill sets and your performance. Now, what I mean by the classical barbell lifts are going to be your powerlifting exercises, your bench presses, your deadlifts, your back squatting, and then you also have the other side of the spectrum, which would be your Olympic weightlifting, your cleans and your snatches, things of those nature. Okay. So with that being said, what I want to talk about today is the barbell lifts and their advantages, and their assets and their advantages, and also talk about some of their disadvantages. Now, keep in mind that all exercise modalities have their place in sports performance. But when we're talking about martial arts skills in particular, okay, there's a lot of other things that have to be looked at in regards to creating strength and creating power and creating speed. All right, and we also have to understand the directions of force that your event, right? In this case, martial arts, your boxing, your kickboxing, what directions of force that things are happening on. So let's go ahead and dive into it, and let's talk about the first thing is how the human body is naturally designed to move, okay, and how it's designed to move in sports. And then let's talk about how the body moves when using classical barbell lifts. Okay, I want to go ahead and just let you know up front that after watching this video, keep on the lookout for my sequels to this video, because after we get done with this one, I'm going to shoot another one that has to talk about defining the different types of strengths, okay, and then how to train for martial arts specifically when you're trying to develop those strengths that you may think that you need. Okay, again, it's all relative to based on kind of where you're at. All right, so first and foremost in here, let's talk about how the human body kind of is designed to move. All right, there are basically three planes of motion that the body is going to move on. And the body never moves on one plane of motion solely. So the first plane of motion that the body can move on is the sagittal plane, which is very common in here when it comes to exercise. And the sagittal plane is running, front to back in here or up and down like this, right? If you were to draw lines right through me, right, coming through the front to the back in here, and then up and down vertical like this. All right, that's the sagittal plane. The other plane is called the frontal plane. And the frontal plane is, if you were to draw a line going from east to west in here, out in here, things happening out in this plane of motion like this, right? So if you were to do a shoulder lateral raise, that would be the frontal plane in here like this, or stepping out into a side lunge, that would be the frontal plane. And then you have the third plane, which is the transverse plane, which is a rotational aspect in here of moving the body along this axis in here like this, okay? So the body is going to always operate on multi-plane direction. It's never going to function on one plane of motion. So that needs to understand that first and foremost, okay? Because a lot of traditional exercises in the gym happen on one plane of motion only. And there's where some of the discrepancies in lie, right? Now the other thing to understand too is that the human body was designed to walk, run, throw, jump, and crawl. And the only way that the human body can really do that is to propel itself through the air. And for it to propel itself through the air, it has to create force off the ground. It has to locomote. Okay, locomotion is one of the body directional forces that we use all the time, when I'm walking in here like this or running, all right? And furthermore, the body is designed to move contralaterally like this in here, meaning that one side of the body is going to be in front of the center of gravity, or the center line in here like this. So if I'm standing with my right leg forward in here, the left arm is going to be slightly ahead like this when we walk in here, right? And this is what's called the body's gait cycle in here like this, right? We're not like rabbits in here where we stand in a bilateral stance with our feet together and our arms down on our side and we hop like this, right? Dogs and cats, they move contralaterally like so, okay? So the body has to always kind of create some kind of reciprocating process in here if it's going to propel itself through the air, right? And that is one of the things that does not happen in traditional weight training exercises. In order for the body to actually propel itself forward or backward in here, or side to side, it not only does it have to move in a contralateral reciprocation fashion, but the body has to create a slinging effect in here through the muscles, right? Your muscles are like elastic rubber bands, and they always have a contract and expand action going on in here. And for the body to actually move itself forward in here, it has to come, all the energy has to originate from the core systems in here, particularly your oblique slings in here like this, which are connected in an X manner in here, connected to your extremities, right? Connected to your shoulders, your pecs, connected to your hip complex, right? And your glutes, etc. Okay, so when the body moves, the body has to move, the upper body moves in the transverse plane. It rotates in here like this. The body has a twist to it when it walks in here, or when it runs, or when it throws something in here, and also when you throw a punch. There's a slinging effect going on here, being driven or delivered on this horizontal path in here like this. Okay. Now there's other directions of that force can happen, right? Force can come upward like this. It can come more diagonal in here, right? It can come at a circular direction here like this. But all the if I throw a kick in here, right? All those techniques that all your punching techniques in here, or you're throwing or picking things up, everything is being done from your trunk in here like this, from all your core systems. Everything here has to have a slinging mechanism like this. If you think about it, if I stand here in a bilateral position, and the faster, the more that I twist my torso in here like this, the higher my arms come up in the air like this, even if I were to go side to side like this in here. There's nothing that you do in everyday life where you just use your arm or just lift your leg up, okay? So your spinal cord has to rotate in here like this. It's not just going into flexion and extension like so, right? Just like hip extension in here. I have to bring my leg out for hip flexion and hip extension in here. again, you know, the body's not standing in a bilateral position doing things in fighting like this. There's no sport that you play in the world where you just stand here and you know, both arms are moving simultaneously together like this, or your legs are just doing things like this. So again, the question is how do the barbell lifts help your body memorize those motor patterns, or how do the barbell lifts actually help improve the motor patterns that would cause you to throw, let's say, an uppercut, or to throw a rear cross punch, or to throw a roundhouse kick in here like this, right? Remember, fighting is very dynamic, so it's not just about, you know, accelerating in here. It's about accelerating. It's also about being reactive. I also, you know, have balance. You know, there's a lot of balance issues going on. I have to be able to move, you know, be stable while I'm in motion in here like this, and techniques are going to come on different directions in here like so. All right. So there's a lot more going on to it. You know, to answer that question about how do I increase my power? Well, in order to improve my striking in here, well, you have to. You know, my recommendation is that you have to train specifically for what you're trying to accomplish. So, you know, if you want to improve your striking power, you need to train in such a way movements that are going to promote the strength that you need to promote acceleration strength, right? To promote speed strength, strength endurance, you know, things of that nature. And when doing that, you got to be able to be in motion while you're doing that. So with that being said here, let's go ahead now and talk about the advantages and some of the disadvantages to using classical barbell lifts, and whether or not they help or hinder your MMA striking, you know, gains and performance. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the advantages to training with the barbell lifts. Now, the one thing that the barbell lifts will do for you, and for anybody, is it will improve your overall strength through your entire body. Okay? And the reason why it's going to be able to do that for you is because, well, first and foremost, any weight-bearing exercises that you do, any heavy load that you put on the body, your body eventually will adapt to the demands placed upon it. Okay? So as long as you're lifting, you know, a reasonable amount of heavy loads where your body has to go through a maximal strain for a short period of time, you're going to produce, you know, strength gains and ultimately, you know, could create more power. You know, if you want to be more powerful, you got to become stronger and faster. Okay. The other advantage to training with the barbell goes back to what I was saying earlier about the different planes of motion. Okay. All barbell lifts are happening on the sagittal plane of motion. All classical bilateral barbell lifts are happening on the sagittal plane of motion. They're not happening on the other two planes, the frontal and the transverse. So the advantage of training on the sagittal plane is that the weight is very close to my center of mass. All right? Whether it's a powerlifting movement or it's an Olympic lifting movement. So I have just a light barbell here, and let's just take a deadlift, for example, because that's easy to do. When I set up for a deadlift, right, whether it's a conventional deadlift or whether it's going into a sumo deadlift, it doesn't really matter. The weight, whether I got 65 pounds on it or 600 pounds on it, the weight is close to the center of mass. And because you're trying to find the optimal leverage, the optimal mechanical power, the body can really, you know, create a, you know, handle and lift an enormous amount of load in here like this because it's close to the center of mass. Okay, so the bar is close to my hips in here. That's where my center of mass is, and I bring the bar in like so for the deadlift. Right, the same thing like with the cleans. Right, if you were to set up for a, you know, a kind of a clean type here like this, the body again is kind of in a, you know, the same basic position in here like this, and when you bring the bar up, it's getting close to your hips in here, and as you snap it up, right, as I snap it up in here and I catch it here, again, the bar is close to the center of mass. Okay, even when you're doing a back squat, right, if I got the barbell on my back, or a front squat, the weight is close to my center of mass. When I bench press, if I'm laying on my back in here and bench press, right, the weight is, again, is very close to my center of mass, where all my biggest muscles are underneath that weight, underneath that barbell, okay? So that is one of the advantages, along with just improving your, that's why it can improve your strength probably more than any other exercise out there, because your whole body is handling that load all the time. All right, and that is the primary advantage of training on that sagittal plane, is it can produce the most force there. There is no way anybody on the planet, whether you're a professional lifter or not, let's say that this is 600 pounds of a deadlift. There's no way that I could pick this deadlift up on the transverse plane, or stand sideways in here and pick this barbell up on the frontal plane here. It's just impossible, all right? The physics are just not going to work, all right? So with that being said, the advantages there are barbell training can produce overall strength, and you can handle the most load there, all right? All right, so let's go ahead now and talk about some of the disadvantages of training with the barbell, how it could hinder and how it does not carry over to your martial arts striking skill sets. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the disadvantages to training solely in the barbell lifts if you're trying to find an edge to improve your power, to improve your striking skill sets. Now, there are quite a few. Going back to the plane of motion again. If you think about it, again, think about this realistically. In fighting or any sport, what plane of motion is that skill set happening? That plane of motion that's happening, again, is happening on the transverse plane. Everything is a rotational action in here like so. So when I go to throw a punch, this is the transverse plane in here like this, right? Throw a punch this way, transverse plane, right? I go to throw a kick, that's on the transverse plane, okay? So the barbell lifts, when I said earlier, training on the sagittal plane, there is nothing happening in fighting that's happening solely on the sagittal plane, okay? That's one of the disadvantages. So if you're training constantly to sit here and produce force like this, okay, and somehow think that is going to improve your striking skill sets, I encourage you to rethink this. And the reason why is the barbell lifts can never, ever train you. They do not train you to propel yourself forward. They don't train you to locomote. Okay? Any kind of movement here, snatching this, doing this stuff in here like this. Remember again, this is all in a bilateral position. This is not how you're standing in a fight. Okay? Barbell lifts have nothing to do with dealing with balance and strength and timing in motion. Okay? The other thing that the barbell lifts won't help you with is they don't produce any kind of a slinging effect. Okay? So when you're training on the sagittal plane of motion all the time, what's happening is you're taking the rotation out of the trunk. And every time that you constantly train in this fashion in here, whether it's deadlifting, cleaning, or squatting in here, or bench pressing, you are isolating the core structure out of it. So you're taking the rotation out of this in here and fixating it, and so now the body is starting to adapt to that kind of environment. And then what happens is after a while, the body's going to find somewhere else to rotate, when it could be a hip or a knee or something like that eventually gives out. Okay, so too much weight-bearing exercises that disconnect the upper body from the lower body. Again, remember, there's nothing in the real world that you do in everyday life, whether it's martial arts training, your job, anything, walking around in the mall, that you're just using your arms or your legs by themselves. They are connected all together starting from here, and that is, again, the gait cycle in here like this. All right? So the other thing that the barbell lifts don't do for you is they have nothing to do with training for your arms to snap and sling out here like this unilaterally, along with your legs. So they actually take the lats out of action, right? They take the triceps out of action. They take any kind of arm extension really out of action here like this. So even a bench press, when you're just benching like this, okay, you are putting all this energy into the shoulder and some degree of your pec, and over time you are binding the shoulder and the lat and the pec together, so this does not free up as much. Okay, that's why heavyweight bodybuilding champion of the world and heavyweight powerlifting champion of the world is not heavyweight boxing champion of the world, because eventually all that muscle in here and all that neurological memorization of patterns in here eventually starts to become normal to the person, and when they go to try to do something dynamic sport like football, right, or baseball, or in this case punching in here, fighting in here, they can't quite really make that work because their body is just too stiff and it doesn't know how to move, right, in this horizontal type fashion or any kind of one of those directional forces. Okay, so again, do the barbells have an advantage? Yes, they do. Do they have a lot of disadvantages? Yes, they do. So you've got to take into account, again, where you're at and how you're using them. If you're using the barbells just to increase your strength, great. Okay, but if you're trying to live off it to help you build up striking, fighting techniques, it's not going to help you very much. Bench pressing is not punching. I don't care how much you can bench press, that does not mean you can throw a better punch. Okay, squatting, right, in a bilateral position like this in here has nothing to do with hip extension, has nothing to do with locomoting forward and throwing a punch in here like this and catching your balance, right? And finally, the last thing I want to add is if you have any muscular imbalances or injuries, rehabilitating injuries, shoulder injuries, lower back problems, hip problems, knee problems, barbell lifting is the last thing you want to do. There are actually a lot of problems over time if you train with the barbell. Squatting compresses your spine, okay? Olympic lifting, snatches and cleans puts a lot of load on the shoulder girdle here, which is not a good spot to be, okay, in here. Bench pressing causes a lot of shoulder and pec issues, rotator cuff issues in here, right? Deadlifting in here, right, can cause back problems and stuff, right? And even if your form is perfect, right, even if your form is completely perfect at any one of those lifts, right, over a period of time, again, they start to isolate and limit the body in its movement and its natural characteristics. So they're isolating your body, even though they are compound movements, right? Compound movements meaning two or more muscle groups moving together. Okay, so again, the answer to this question is yes, they can help, and yes, they also can hinder, and it really depends on how you use them. Again, I'm not saying you don't use them. I have used them, but if I had to make a list of the things that the barbell lift will not, help you. It's not going to help you with contralateral reciprocation. It's not going to help you with balance in motion. It's not going to help you with timing. It's not going to help you with unilateral strength. It's not going to help you with your endurance. And the list goes on and on. So I hope that helped. If you found this video informative, again, please comment on it, give it a like, share it with your friends, and don't forget to check out my next video that's going to follow through this and defining the different types of strengths and how to train for them, and why you solely cannot just rely on pure iron or weights as a form of improving your power for your MMA striking. Again, my name is Rich Alton. Thank you and take care.